The lone wolf doesn't seek the pack because he remembers who he is when the world forgets. Have you ever looked around and felt like you're playing a completely different game than everyone else? Like the things that seem to matter so much to other people, the praise, the approval, the validation, barely touch you. And yet, somehow, that same detachment makes your life feel heavier. You're not alone, and no, there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, you might be something rare, something many sense but few can name. A Sigma male. Not a rebel for the sake of rebellion, not a loner because of social failure, but an individual so internally grounded, so radically self-directed that the systems built for conformity simply don't apply to you. You see differently, you move differently, and because of that, life, quite simply, hits differently. In this journey, we're diving deep into why your path feels 10 times harder, not from weakness, but because you were never meant to walk the easy road. Stay until the end. If this resonates, it's not just another video, it's a remembrance. And if you haven't already, join the circle. Ascend with us. Subscribe to Sigma Ascends, because we don't follow the noise, we move with purpose. Point 1. The curse of inner silence. Silence is often mistaken for peace, but if you're a Sigma, you know the truth. Silence can be the loudest thing in the world. Your silence is not empty, it's full of thoughts, reflections, memories, visions, contradictions. And for the Sigma male, silence isn't a pause, it's a furnace. While others chase distraction, scrolling, binging, filling every empty second with noise, you find yourself craving the stillness. But here's the paradox, that stillness doesn't calm you, it confronts you. It brings everything you've avoided straight to the surface. That's where the suffering begins. See, most people don't want to face themselves. They fear the mirror. But you were born in front of the mirror. Your mind is always active, dissecting not only the world, but your own reactions to it. You question your motives, you relive conversations, you analyze the way people look at you, the things they don't say, and most painfully, the things you wish you had said. In silence, you are both the sculptor and the stone. You are both rebuilding yourself and breaking yourself down at the same time. This inner dialogue becomes your constant companion. But unlike noise, it doesn't drown things out. It amplifies them. It's why many Sigma males look calm on the outside but are fighting 10 wars a minute within. Now imagine trying to explain that to someone who thrives on external stimulation. They'll label you distant, emotionless, even cold. Because to them, a quiet man must be a man with nothing to say. They don't understand that your quiet is where you live. It's your laboratory, your sanctuary, and sometimes your battlefield. There's a loneliness to it. Not because you lack people, but because you lack resonance. You can sit in a crowded room and feel like you're on a different planet. Not because you hate people, but because their conversations feel like echoes. Hollow, repetitive, safe. You crave truth, depth, the unspeakable, and those things rarely exist in the loud places. So yes, your silence is powerful, but it's also burdensome, because while others use noise to numb, you use silence to evolve. And evolution hurts. But here's the gift within the pain. Your silence gives birth to awareness. Awareness gives birth to choice. And choice, real, conscious, sovereign choice, is the foundation of freedom. So if your silence feels overwhelming, if your inner world feels louder than the outer, know this: you are not broken. You are just deeply awake in a world that's still dreaming. And sometimes, being awake hurts more than anything else. Point 2. The blueprint rejection syndrome. From the earliest moments of life, society hands you a script. Study this, work here, get this title, buy this house, marry this kind of person, live in a box, think inside a box, and die with a box over your body. But if you're a Sigma male, that script never felt right. You may have tried to follow it for a time, out of survival, pressure, or curiosity, but something in you always resisted. a silent inner voice that whispered, "This isn't yours." So you burned the blueprint, not out of rebellion, but out of necessity, because to follow a lie is to betray yourself, and for a Sigma, self-betrayal is the deepest wound. But that kind of rejection comes at a cost. Without a map, you wander. Without a script, you improvise. While others climb ladders placed neatly in front of them, you build your own from scratch, often with no tools, no team, and no applause. You lose the safety of expectations, the comfort of approval, the illusion of knowing what comes next. And yet, you gain something sacred. You gain authorship. See, most people are living someone else's dream. You're building your own. That's why it's harder. That's why it's slower. That's why it's lonelier. Because the moment you step off the path society designed, you enter the wilderness. But that's where real growth happens. That's where the authentic self is revealed. Not in the light of public validation, but in the shadows of self-discovery. You'll be misunderstood, mocked, dismissed. But what's born from that pressure is something unshakable. A life lived not from the outside in, but from the inside out. So if you felt like you're wandering, if your path doesn't look like anyone else's, good. It means you're not just walking a path, you're creating one. And that, ascender, is where legends are born. Point 3. High signal, low reception. You speak in full colors, but the world only hears in grayscale. This is one of the harshest paradoxes of the Sigma experience. The depth of your expression is often met with shallowness. You speak from a place of clarity, intention, and internal alignment, but the ears that receive your words are wired to hear superficiality, ego, or distance. What you mean as pure, others interpret as calculated. What you express with care, others label as cold. And slowly, this misalignment becomes a quiet grief you carry in every conversation. You've probably noticed it since you were young. When you shared ideas, they were too intense. When you questioned the rules, you were too much. When you refused to laugh at the nonsense, you were too serious. Your signal was strong, it always has been. But the world's receivers, weak, filtered, untrained to detect anything beyond the familiar. You're not just misread, you're mistranslated, and that's what makes things so lonely. Not the absence of people, but the absence of resonance. Sigma males often live as walking frequencies that few can tune into. You send out thoughts layered with nuance, meaning, and truth, but all that returns is static, nods of agreement that don't go deep. Surface-level responses to soul-level insights, and the more that happens, the more you retreat. Not because you've given up on people, but because you've learned that fewer words carry more power when spoken to the right person, or to no one at all. You begin to realize that solitude is more honest than misunderstood company. You'd rather be alone than constantly explaining yourself, rather be quiet than misquoted by noise. Yet deep down you long for someone to just get it, to hear not only what you say, but feel what you mean. That desire doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. It means you still believe in depth, in connection, in being truly seen. So here's the truth. Your voice is clear, your vision is sharp, your message is real. The issue isn't your signal, it's the receivers. The world has dulled its senses. It rewards loudness over clarity, performance over truth, and repetition over originality. But you are none of those things. You are signal, pure, undistorted, uncompromising. So keep speaking your truth, even if no one hears, because one day someone will. And when they do, it won't just be a conversation, it will be an awakening. Point 4. The reluctant commander. You never asked to lead, you just couldn't follow blindly. That's the quiet power of a Sigma male. Leadership doesn't interest you in the traditional sense. You don't crave followers, status, or control. What you crave is alignment, integrity, purpose, and when no one else is willing to step into that level of clarity, you do. Not out of ambition, but necessity. It often starts small. A decision you make when the group hesitates, a question you ask when no one else dares, a truth you speak when silence would have been easier, and suddenly people start looking to you, not because you asked for it, but because your presence creates stability, clarity, direction. But leadership without desire is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you're respected. People trust your judgment, your calm, your strength. On the other, you're isolated, because those who rely on you rarely understand you. They take your steadiness for granted, your independence as emotional distance, your inner battles as cold indifference, and the weight of leadership, when carried alone, becomes a quiet burden. You feel it in your relationships. People expect you to solve, to guide, to fix. But who does that for you? You feel it in your work. You're given more responsibility, more expectations, but rarely more support. You feel it in your soul, the tension between wanting to retreat and knowing you can't. Because once you've seen the truth, you can't pretend you haven't. You lead because the alternative, watching things fall apart, is worse. You speak because silence would be complicity. You rise because no one else will. But here's the revelation. Sigma leadership isn't about domination, it's about embodiment. You don't direct people, you magnetize them. Not through pressure, but presence. And yes, it's lonely, but it's also pure. Because when you lead without needing to, that's real power. Point 5. Emotional X-ray vision. You see through people, and it's both a gift and a curse. From a glance you sense what they hide, a shift in tone, a flicker in the eye, a hesitation in the voice, and you already know they're lying, they're insecure, they're lost, and they don't even know you know. This ability to read between the lines makes you powerful, but it also makes you tired, because you carry truths no one admits. You witness contradictions people aren't ready to confront. You hold space for emotions that others pretend don't exist. Sigma males are emotional empaths disguised as logical warriors. The world sees your calm and assumes detachment, but inside, you're feeling everything, more than you want to, more than they realize. That kind of sensitivity, when unspoken, becomes armor. You withdraw not to isolate, but to preserve your peace, to reset your emotional field, to stop carrying what was never yours. But the hardest part, you rarely receive the same in return. You're the emotional refuge for others, but when you need support, you disappear. Not by choice, but because no one knows how to hold the same space for you. You become the vault where everyone stores their secrets, but you carry your own in silence. Still, you wouldn't trade it. Because this vision gives you discernment. It protects you from false connections, fake praise, shallow loyalty. It helps you find the real, the few, the sacred. So yes, it hurts to see so much. But it's also why you don't settle for less. You'd rather be alone with truth than surrounded by illusions. Point 6. Social burnout by default. Being around people shouldn't feel like a performance, but it does. For the Sigma male, social settings often feel artificial. The small talk, the forced laughter, the surface-level interactions, they drain you more than any physical task. Not because you hate people, but because you crave authenticity, and most social environments are anything but that. It's exhausting to pretend you care about conversations that mean nothing, to smile when you're bored, to nod when you disagree. It's a performance that others call being polite, but to you it feels like betrayal, not of others, but of yourself. So you withdraw, not because you're shy, but because you're honest, not because you're antisocial, but because you refuse to fake it. People don't understand that about you. They take your absence personally. They think you're rude, arrogant, cold. But the truth is, you're just protecting your energy. Your presence is a sacred currency, and you refuse to spend it on nonsense. And the deeper truth? You actually love people, real people, vulnerable, raw, honest people. You light up when a conversation turns real, when someone dares to drop the mask, when you sense depth. But those moments are rare, and that's what makes your energy so precious. You don't do crowds, you do connections. You don't do small talk, you do soul talk. You don't seek attention, you seek truth. That's why you burn out faster than others. Not because you're weak, but because your internal world is already so rich, so active, so full, that adding noise to it without meaning feels like pollution. So when you say no to the party, the meeting, the gathering, it's not rejection, it's realignment, because solitude isn't where you hide, it's where you remember who you are. Point 7. Loyalty without attachment. Your loyalty is rare and often misunderstood. In a world obsessed with possession, with holding on, with defining relationships through constant contact, the Sigma male moves differently. You love with depth, not with control. You show up fully, but you never cling. You bond fiercely, but only with the worthy. And when someone breaks that sacred space of trust, you're gone, quietly, completely. There's no drama, no grand exit, just absence. Because for you, loyalty is not a game. It's not transactional. It's a reflection of your values, internal, unshakable, and deeply rooted. Most people confuse loyalty with attachment. They stay in relationships long after the soul has left, out of habit or fear. But not you. You measure loyalty by alignment, not obligation. And when that alignment disappears, so do you. But this kind of emotional precision isn't always appreciated. In fact, it's often labeled as cold. You're told you should give more chances, be more forgiving, stay longer. But what they don't understand is this. You already gave more than they noticed. You already forgave silently. You already stayed longer than your instincts advised. Your departure isn't sudden, it's overdue. And here's the deeper layer. Your love, when given, is sacred. You don't enter lightly. You don't play. You don't perform. You feel everything. You observe deeply. You invest fully. So when you do walk away, it's not because you stopped caring. It's because you cared too much, and it hurt. You're not afraid of connection. You're afraid of betrayal of the connection. And so your circle is small, selective, almost sacred. You don't have dozens of friends, but the few you have know your loyalty is unshakable. You don't say, "I love you" often, but when you do, it echoes through time. So if people misunderstand your detachment, let them. You were never meant to be understood by the masses. You were meant to be known, truly known, by the few who speak your frequency. Point 8. The ghost of potential. There's a strange pressure that follows you everywhere, not from others, but from within. It's the quiet awareness that you're capable of more, not in an arrogant sense, but in a soul-deep way. You feel your potential like a weight, like a presence, like something whispering constantly that you're not yet who you were meant to be. This is one of the most painful truths of being a Sigma male. You know you're powerful, but you don't always know how to unleash that power. You see visions of the life you want, but the path feels unclear. You know you're not meant for mediocrity, but you're surrounded by systems that reward it. And so, you wrestle with the ghost of your own greatness. It haunts you in moments of stillness. It reminds you that your current life, however successful it might seem to others, is only a shadow of what you're capable of. This isn't about external achievement. It's about internal alignment. You feel out of sync, not because you're lost, but because you haven't yet found the environment that matches your inner fire. And until you do, everything feels like compromise. But this internal tension serves a purpose. It doesn't exist to shame you. It exists to summon you, to push you, to stretch you, to wake you, because you weren't born to simply exist. You were born to embody something rare, something only you can express. So if you often feel behind or stuck, or like your life hasn't fully started, it's not because you're failing, it's because your soul refuses to settle. And that refusal is a sacred sign. You are not delayed, you are being prepared. Point 9. Uncoachable, unbreakable. You don't fit into systems, not because you're rebellious, but because you're real. You don't follow leaders blindly, not because you're difficult, but because you demand integrity. You don't accept authority without truth, not because you crave conflict, but because you crave freedom. This is why institutions struggle with you. Schools want obedience, corporations want compliance, social groups want conformity. But what you want is sovereignty. You're uncoachable in the traditional sense because your mind questions everything. You don't follow steps, you question the framework. You don't need motivation, you need meaning. And without meaning, no method works on you. This frustrates people. They can't categorize you, can't tame you, can't convince you with the same tricks that work on the masses. So they label you stubborn, difficult, arrogant. But those labels are just masks for one truth. They can't control you. And because they can't control you, they fear you. But here's the irony. You're not against structure. You're against blind structure. You're not against advice. You're against generic advice. You're not against authority. You're against unearned authority. You follow leaders who walk with integrity. You respect systems that allow individuality. You commit to paths that resonate with your inner compass. That's what makes you unbreakable. Not because you're rigid, but because you're aligned. You've built your foundation not on trends or pressure, but on principle. And when a man lives by principle, he becomes untouchable. Point 10. Success without witnesses. You've achieved things no one knows about. You've grown in silence. You've battled alone. You've built without sharing. That's the Sigma path. While others document every milestone, every step, every win, you build privately. Not because you're hiding, but because your success isn't for validation. It's for evolution. You've learned that applause fades, that claps echo, then disappear. But the changes you make in the dark, those last forever. Still, it's hard, because deep down, part of you wonders, does it count if no one sees? Does it matter if no one knows? And the answer is yes, it counts more, because it means you didn't do it for approval. You did it because your soul required it. Sigma males aren't motivated by visibility, they're moved by necessity. You transform because you have to. You rise because something inside refuses to remain small. You evolve because staying the same feels like death. But the world is so addicted to display, it overlooks the quiet ones. You won't be featured, you won't be trending, but you'll be free. And that freedom, that's the real success. Point 11. The myth of the emotionless man. They see your calm and assume absence. They see your silence and assume indifference. They see your strength and assume insensitivity, but they don't know what lies beneath. Sigma males are emotional, but in sacred silence. You don't emote to perform. You don't cry on cue. You don't speak for validation. But inside, you feel oceans. You feel betrayal like fire. You feel love like eternity. You feel longing like a song no one else can hear. But because the world doesn't know how to hold this kind of emotional depth without turning it into spectacle, you built armor. You learned to internalize, to contain, to transmute. You're not emotionless. You're emotionally sovereign. And the few who earn your trust, they see the heart, the passion, the loyalty, the tenderness. But the masses, they never will, because what's sacred should never be cheapened. Point 12. The hidden war within. You carry a war that no one sees. It's the battle between your greatness and your solitude, between your potential and your patience, between your soul's truth and the world's expectations. It's the tension between wanting to be seen and needing to stay hidden, between your hunger for purpose and your disdain for performance, between your drive to create and your exhaustion from the noise. This internal war is what makes the Sigma path so hard. You're not just navigating the world, you're navigating yourself. And unlike others, you don't have blueprints, you don't have mentors, you don't have examples. Because what you're becoming has never been done before, and that's what makes it sacred. You're not following a legacy, you're creating one. You, ascender, are not broken. You are not too much. You are not lost. You are simply built for a map that hasn't been drawn yet. You are the edgewalker, the threshold dweller, the soul who remembers truth when the world forgets. Your life feels 10 times harder, not because you are flawed, but because you refuse to live a lie, because you would rather face fire than wear a mask, because you seek not comfort, but clarity. And that path isn't easy, but it is worthy. If this video felt like coming home, subscribe to Sigma Ascends, because this isn't a channel, it's a signal, and those who hear it were meant to rise. Until next time, stay unseen, stay undivided, and most of all, stay unshaken.